What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Koop'd podcast, the podcast that had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these cranberries. And as always, folks, my name is Koopa, and each week I'm joined by a friend or two to talk about all the happenings of pop culture. And this week, folks, we got a doozy. We are approximately about 10-ish days out from the latest edition of the MCU dropping, being Spider-Man No Way Home. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll be less than a week before we get all the answers as to what is actually happening in this movie and if it's actually going to smash every Spider-Man or every box office record. But before we do that, we obviously have to, get there first and foremost. And I've tried to take a little stroll down memory lane for reasons unbeknownst to everybody. Why not? You never know who might show up in this movie. But before we do that, I just want to let you guys know that, again, this podcast is brought to you guys by the BLEAV Podcast Network, our new hosting site. So make sure you guys check us out at BLEAV.com /Koop'd. All of our pre-existing 40-ish episodes are up there at the website right now. And the more traffic you guys drive to the site, the better it's going to be in regards to our ad revenue. If you guys want to help me keep my lights on and keep me fed, I know somebody out there might want to do that. But again, shout out to BLEAV. If you guys are interested in podcasts, including sports, pop culture, comedy, all sorts of things. They have over 400 shows on their network, so make sure to check them out at BLEAV Podcast on social media. And without further ado, let's introduce our panel today. Joining us for the first time in a few months, continuing his streak as the longest tenured guest on the Koop'd podcast. I don't even remember what we talked about last time. I think I made you talk about Arthur without you having seen a single episode of Arthur. Please welcome back to the show, my friendo, Super Glentendo. Glenn, how are you?
I'm all right, dude. This guy said without further ado. That was a lot of ado, bro. I was waiting there, just waiting for my name to be called. That was a long intro.
Yeah, kind of akin to how Uncle Ben was waiting for Peter to come home to paint the kitchen. And we all know how that ended up. Glenn, what have you been up to since the last time you were on my show? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Just chilling. I'm working the same stuff, watching Spider-Man movies to have this conversation today and to remind myself why I'm a scholar of the Spider-Man universe. You guys are going to get my PhD thesis on the Spider-Man movie, the lore and everything, bro. I'm ready for this conversation.
Did you even watch the latest Spider-Man movie?
I did.
He did, actually.
I did.
We were there together. Yeah. And if you guys, listen, if you're a fan of us, I guess, and you recognize that voice, making his debut on the podcast, I have seen almost every Marvel movie with this man for the last 6 years. Actually, the first time we went to see a movie together, Spider-Man was an integral part of the story. Please welcome executive producer of the Glentendo podcast, Riz. What's up, man? How are you?
What's up? I feel like I'm like one of those characters that's been teased for a long time. Finally made an appearance.
Are you our podcast Adam Warlock? Is that how this works?
No. Someone more important than that.
Oh man. Interesting. Riz, how you doing, man? Are you ready to talk about some Spider-Man today?
I'm good. I'm ready to get spoiled since I've avoided almost everything so far.
Yeah, me too. I'm wondering how that's gonna go because, like, full disclosure, right? This new Spider-Man movie. Yeah, we're gonna get to each and every movie in the series and all that stuff later, and you'll see how I feel about the home series. But I haven't seen literally anything. I haven't even seen a trailer. Like, I've actually seen nothing of this new movie. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm wondering. I was like coming into this thinking like, damn, am I just gonna like get spoiled completely? Like, is that the way we're gonna talk about this? But I don't know how much like is out there yet and how much nobody really knows about this movie yet. So whatever. But I'm down for anything. So we could just go for it, honestly.
Sure. So just as a disclosure up top, again, we are going to be talking about all of the known information, first and foremost, of this movie coming out on December 17th. So anything that's been in trailers, in press tours, it's not. I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but some of it is sort of important to what we're talking about today. And the other thing is we're going to probably tease into some speculation, obviously with who's in this movie, has led the fan base to kind of let their mind wander as to who could possibly show up in this movie, which is why I thought it would be a fun thing to do here. But, again, we're not going to be talking about any, I haven't seen the movie. I don't have a dad that works at Marvel. I'm not going to be talking about any of the leaked stuff. But, for the most part, we're going to keep it to at least what's out there in the press. And I got to say, I'm very impressed with your guys' ability to stay completely in the dark on this movie, because I feel like everywhere I turn, they are truly just shoving Spider-Man down my throat.
Everywhere you go, you see his face.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly. There's murals of Spider-Man painted in Europe as I, make my commute to Englewood, New Jersey to work. But so I guess, again, just got to give you guys a hint of what we're doing today. Like we said, the latest edition of Spider-Man is the conclusion to the Homecoming trilogy, actually, according to what John Watts has said. He's actually going on to direct the Fantastic Four after this movie. Like the Marvel version of the Fantastic Four.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Does that have a cast yet? What?
So I read
I didn't even know that was happening.
I read a rumored cast online. It looks fake as shit, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay.
But I will say I'm very excited. As we're going to get everyone's respective thoughts when we get there. I've enjoyed the Homecoming movies so far, like the Homecoming trilogy as it is so far. So I'll see how my opinions sway at the end of that. But I'm excited for, real comic book people to get their hands on a franchise that I really like in the Fantastic Four. But that's not coming for a couple, few more years at the very least. So we are instead going to be taking a stroll down memory lane through multiverse and multiverse as we take a look at the history of Spider-Man on the big screen. Obviously, with characters that have appeared in the trailers for these films. There has been some speculation ever since the cast started leaking of, could there be some potential crossover happening here? So, we're going to get into all of that. So I'll ask you guys up top. When was the last time you saw a lot of these movies that we're going to be talking about today?
Riz, you can go first.
It's been a while. Like at least 8 years. I haven't really rewatched the first three like the Raimi trilogy in a long time, and I haven't even seen the Amazing movies.
I'm gonna have to hard carry you
while.
guys as to why you should watch
because those movies,
one of those movies,
are trash. That's why you haven't seen those movies. You could smell that from across the universe, bro. I saw Far From Home like 2 weeks ago, and then I saw Homecoming when it came out in theaters, and so I guess that was a while ago actually. And the Raimi ones, like all three of those, I've seen them dozens of times. Like honestly, man, like if you asked me right now to like off the top of my head just tell you each scene from the first movie, I can do it. I've seen that movie like so many times that I'm playing it right now in my head as we're talking, bro. I'm watching this, like this is a good movie, bro. I'm watching it now.
You're watching Uncle Ben die again and again.
Oh
God,
again.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Gets me every time, bro.
Yeah. I told Riz before we started the show, in preparation for this podcast, I hadn't seen the original trilogy or the Amazing films in a minute. It had been at least maybe like 5 or 6 years since I actually like sat down and watched these movies, because they're not like as good as the original trilogy is.
They're not good. They're not good. Just say that. Less words. They're not good. That's all you gotta say, bro.
You're bugging. But they're also, for some, I don't know, I don't see them on cable a lot, as I think a lot of like the replayable comic book movies have really swayed towards the MCU side of things. But I actually found out in preparation for this podcast, the original trilogy is available on Peacock if you have a premium subscription. So for $5, you can watch one really good movie and two okay movies for $5. And I rented the Amazing trilogy on YouTube because you can't stream those on anything. The Homecoming trilogy, I just recently did a rewatch of the MCU like a few months ago, so like those movies are still pretty fresh in my brain. But yeah, I think we can. We'll get started as we recap Spider-Man Past, as we're gonna take you guys on a trip to the humble year of 2002. Do you remember where you guys were when you saw this movie for the first time? Because I don't.
You know what's weird? I don't remember. I saw it so many times that I actually don't remember the first time I saw it. But I'm pretty sure I didn't see the first one in theaters because I was like really young at the time. Like I was like a baby. So like I remember it coming out and people going crazy about it. But I remember just like, dude, superhero movies were dead back then. Like I grew up, you know, like loving superhero movies, and then they died like when I was a kid with like Batman and Robin, and then you never got any of them. And then like X-Men came out and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like great. And then Spider-Man came out after that. Like there wasn't this hype around that movie. It kind of just like people liked it after it was out and were like, wait, this is actually good. Like superhero movies were not good back then. So this movie actually surprised people back in 2002. I remember people being surprised by it. But yeah, to your point, like I actually don't remember the first time I saw it. I don't know where, if it was in theaters or at home. I have no clue.
Riz, you got any recollection of the year
I know
2002?
exactly where and when I saw this movie because I guess that was around the time I'd started like watching or going to the theaters at all with my family, and we always went to the same theater, the AMC in Ridgefield Park, which was not an AMC back then.
It's a good theater.
But
I've met
yeah,
great
yeah.
memories in
We've
that
seen
theater.
many a movie in that theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, plenty of Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, you must have been like, dude, you're younger than me. So for you, like, you must have literally been like 1 year old. Like, how? I don't even know how old you were.
No,
Like,
I think I was like 8.
You
Yeah.
were,
Yeah, I
you
was
were,
probably 8.
You were the crying baby in the movie theater, man. That everybody was just getting mad at.
No, I'd already been to the movies plenty of times. All right, I saw Pokemon there. I saw Harry Potter, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I was a veteran. And then also, that movie turned me into a Nickelback fan. But we don't talk about that.
Damn, on record, bro. This guy actually waited.
Man.
He waited until his first podcast appearance to admit to the world, I'm a Nickelback fan.
I was 8 years old. I didn't know any better.
Yeah, you know this is gonna go on the internet, right?
You said it. You said it present tense, man. You said it present tense. You have to hold that.
No. Past tense.
Okay. All right. You're gonna have to
So
hold that.
you would have
Putting
been
words in my mouth.
So you would have been the same age as me when I saw this movie. I would have been in the 2nd grade, I think, when this movie came out. Summer of going into the 3rd grade. I have vivid memories of seeing this movie in the theater with my dad. This movie like totally changed my life when I saw it for the first time as a kid. I knew like jack about superhero films. A lot of what I grew up on were those really bad like 90s Batman movies. Like
Yikes.
I remember we had them on VHS. I probably still have them somewhere in my house, but I own that media physical because it's important to my life. But yeah, I just remember seeing this and like Spider-Man. I was so cool. You know, I remember whenever I'd play like Marvel vs. Capcom on like the arcade cabinet in the movie theater that I went to go see this movie, and I would always pick Spider-Man because I liked how he just looked cool. He's the coolest superhero, and he's my favorite superhero for a reason. You know, and this movie completely like took over my life. I bought all the merch. I wanted all the merch for my birthday that following year. I think I had a Spider-Man themed birthday party at some point, and this is all. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about my 25th birthday. I'm just talking about my 8th birthday.
Talking about last week, guys.
Yeah, I'm talking.
You guys, Toby Mcguire, Spider-Man birthday when he was 25 a week ago.
Yeah, but I do like the point that you brought up, Glenn, about how monumental this movie was for the comic book movie genre. Like you said, like coming out of like the 90s, superhero movies were really dead on arrival. People forget that Marvel was on the verge of going bankrupt, which is why they started selling off a lot of their popular IP to like bigger companies, which is why, you know, we got the X-Men Fox movie, the Fox X-Men movies. Sony got their hands on Spider-Man. And at the time of this movie releasing, according to what Wikipedia says, it was the 3rd highest grossing film of 2002 and the 6th highest grossing film of all time when this movie released.
Yeah.
I think like it made over $820 million. Like that's a
which by today's standards that's huge, but by today's standards it's like the worst superhero movies make $1 billion. Like literally Spider-Man 1, the first one, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, that movie is better than pretty much all the other movies that Spider-Man has been in, but it's somehow like hasn't made as much money as them. Like it set the groundwork for like all this Marvel stuff and all of this superhero stuff. Like even Batman came back with like Batman Begins and everything a couple of years after this, because Spider-Man really was like where this genre came back. Like this, he kind of revived the genre. And then like obviously everything came after that. So yeah, it was a huge thing. And to your point, actually, I wanted to say that like I grew up like loving superheroes, and like I knew a lot about Spider-Man because of the animated series and like the comic books, but he was never like my number one. And like I never really loved Spider-Man. I just liked him. Like I was like, oh, he's cool looking. But you know, Batman's the guy, right? So this movie comes out, and then we'll get into the second movie too. But those two movies really are why like I'm a huge Spider-Man fan now. Like I really love Spider-Man because of how good this movie was. So yeah, I totally feel you on that.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man. Do you guys want to take a guess at what the two films ahead of Spider-Man in gross in 2002 were?
2002? Maybe like a Pixar movie?
I'll give you a hint. Riz already mentioned one of them.
What?
Pokemon?
Yeah. No.
Uh-oh.
Harry Potter?
Yeah,
Oh,
Harry Potter
Harry
and the Chamber
Potter.
of Secrets
Okay.
is number 2.
Nice. What's number 1?
Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
That movie grossed $936 million.
The universe movies, man. Those like giant universe movies.
Though they started that stuff.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Another thing you mentioned that's interesting is that like again for this conversation, I think it's important to lay the groundwork of like the history of Spider-Man movies, because like or superhero movies in general, but specifically Spider-Man, is that like, you know, Superman has this big hit movie in the 70s with Chris Reeve and everything, right? And then ever since that was a big hit, like everyone was scrambling to like, hey, how do we get our heroes up there? And it took like 10 years for them to even make a Batman movie after that, like the Tim Burton Batman. And Spider-Man was even tougher because it, like you said earlier, it's like Marvel's always been a pretty small company. That later on we can get into like how that was actually an advantage for them with the MCU, but like they were always like the cartoon rights for Spider-Man would always be like somewhere else, like at Fox, and then like the movie rights would be at like Sony. Like they were just trying to get the money wherever they could, and a lot of failed projects over the years. Like it was just super messy. Like at one point James Cameron was set to like direct a Spider-Man movie starring Tom Cruise, and like when you hear the pitch of this movie, it's like the worst movie you ever heard of. Like it's not actually a guy wearing a Spider-Man costume. It's like this doctor doing experiments on people in like a hospital basement, and one of the guys has 8 arms, and they wanted to call that Spider-Man. Like it was
the
that
man
bad.
spider.
Yeah.
The human spider.
Oh god, that sucks. But yeah, like, you know, things like that. So then over the years, another cool little anecdote is that like when Batman came out in the 80s and it was this huge hit, like apparently Stan Lee, the creator of Spider-Man, he was friends with Bob Kane, the dude who created Batman. And so he invited him to the set of the Batman movie. And he's showing him around. He's like, look at this Gotham City that they built. Like, this movie's going to be huge. Like, where's Spider-Man? He was constantly teasing him about it. Like, how come your hero doesn't have a movie? And then Batman comes out, smashes. And he calls him up like a petty, like kind of friendly, but kind of like to be an asshole. Like he was like, hey, look how good my movie did. Like, where's Spider-Man? And then fast forward to 10 years later, Spider-Man finally comes out, destroys Batman's numbers, like not even close. And Stan Lee's doing an interview. He's like, yeah, I would call the guy and, you know, rub it in his face, but he's dead. So I can't.
Oh my god.
Damn.
That's why Stan Lee's the GOAT, man. Rest in power. Excelsior, the whole 9 yards. It's funny you mentioned that leading up to the 90s. I was been watching a lot of Spider-Man related content because that's just where my hyperfixation has landed for the month. I watched a video that talked about how, I forget who it was. I want to say it was like somebody involved with the Harry Potter films. They wanted to get the rights from Marvel to do like a really dark take on Spider-Man. They wanted to cast like Edward Norton as Spider-Man, which,
oh my god.
that would have been worse than Toby Mcguire.
Dude, the
Like-
MCU would not exist today if that happened.
Yeah, imagine Edward Norton losing his job as Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. Like, that would have been some incredible stuff. But yeah, lo and behold, we do land on Toby Mcguire as our first Spider-Man here in the original trilogy, which features
The GOAT.
the likes of we'll talk about it. But it features the likes of Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, James Franco as Harry
The
Osborn,
GOAT.
Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn /
That's
the
the
Green
GOAT.
Goblin.
That's actually the GOAT.
Yeah. Throughout the other films, we get the likes of Alfred Molina reprising as Dr. Octopus. And then some, not so memorable villains like Eric Foreman. I'm sorry, Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, aka Venom. But how can I forget Rosemary Harris, GOAT, as Aunt May throughout the original
Oh,
trilogy.
and don't forget, put some respect upon my guy who plays J. Jonah Jameson. That's
Of
the
course, how
best
can I forget?
casting of all time.
Yeah, 100%.
J.K. Simmons.
J.K.
as
Simmons, bro.
as J. Jonah Jameson. That has to be one of the best. Like, if I'm a casting person, I'm hanging on the rim for the rest of my life for that one. Like,
Yeah.
if you're the guy that's just like, hey, I got this guy. Like, I don't really know about what J.K. Simmons was doing before he was doing Spider-Man. I'm assuming he was, working, but I can't not see this character and not think of J.K. Simmons, which is exactly why, as Glenn found out a few weeks ago when he watched the post-credit scene of Far From Home, they're bringing him back.
Yeah.
Which
is
I think that's
insane. That it's like, I can't believe that they have they recast everyone it's so weird because it's like, all right, usually you recast people for these new movies because they're in a different universe, right? But then they're like, all right, let's bring Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe back as Green Goblin and as Doc Ock, but they're not like playing a new version of those characters. They're playing them exactly themselves from the old movie, apparently. But then J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons is playing a different J. Jonah Jameson. It's so weird, man. It's like, it's
He's a
just so
constant.
odd.
He's in
Yeah.
every timeline, in every Marvel
Yeah.
universe, every reality. He's always
he's a Nexus
J.
being.
Jonah
That's
Jameson.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
He's a Nexus being.
Enter the J. Jonah Jameson verse, bro. Oh
He's the
my
one
God.
constant. He's the one constant in every universe, which I find hilarious. But yeah, so obviously the original trilogy directed by Sam Raimi. So I guess we can kind of talk, broad strokes of what Glenn, you talked a bit about what you feel about Spider-Man 1, but give us like a broad take on like what your thoughts on this original trilogy is as the Raimi-verse expert here, as a lot of what's going to pop up in this new film. I feel like when we get to the end of it, I'd say the first two films are probably going to be the most important
Yeah.
moving forward, as the third one probably isn't going to be as much, but just broad strokes, like what are your thoughts now in the year 2021 about the Raimiverse?
All right. So now that we live in this, universe where, superhero movies just fall out of the sky, particularly Marvel movies. Like, you literally can't leave your house without getting hit by a superhero movie. Like, these movies have aged even better because, man, they were good when they came out, and they were just kind of like classic movies. Like, the original 3 movies are like just great. And then you look to now, and I appreciate them now even more because honestly, I still think that those 3 movies are better than all the ones after. I know the third one is contentious, but like, honestly, I liked it when it came out, and I was like, oh, that's not as good as 2 and 1. But on its own terms, I still think like, especially the first half of it are really, really good. And I think there's like, even some of the stuff that people cringe at, it's like at least funny and memorable. Like the James Franco memes from Spider-Man 3 alone make that movie worth it. Okay. So like those memes are godlike. So it is disappointing how they did Venom, but like outside of that, like you got to think, man, those are 3 solid movies. 2 is incredible. It's a top 5, probably even top 3 superhero movie ever. The first one is probably top 5 as well. And then the third one is nowhere in the top 10, but still, they're all 3 really good. You have great performances, great stories. I actually cared about the characters. Like in Spider-Man 2, when he's not even Spider-Man, the Peter Parker stuff is really interesting to me. And like, they really got him right as a character. Like, he's a character that is not cool. You know, he's someone who's kind of picked on, and like he has these powers, and they just balanced all that so well, man. Like, I don't know, those three movies are just really great, and it's hard for me to think of many things that are bad about them other than Venom and 3. And that's
That's
it.
like half the movie, though, man. It's
Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah, and again, like, I'm fully aware that they fumbled the bag with that. But I think the movie, if you watch that movie again, the first like half of the movie actually really great, and like the Sandman stuff is really great.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
I agree with that.
The whole dynamic with, like, you know, MJ and Peter in that story is like, now they're together, and she knows that he's Spider-Man, and everyone loves Spider-Man. They're throwing a parade for him. And then she's like this struggling actress, and she's like getting kind of jealous of him, and he can't see it. Like, they're having conversations where he's oblivious to the fact that he's hurting her feelings. All that stuff is so cool and interesting. And then, yeah, they shove the Venom stuff down your throat. And then there's the weird dancing scene. All that stuff sucks. And like the whole Harry Osborn plot line, it kind of just turns around out of nowhere, and it kind of sucks. But the ending fight was pretty cool. And so I think it started strong and it ended strong. And I think that that's what mattered. And the other two movies are literally almost perfect. So overall, that's a pretty high average. IMO.
Yeah. I kind of forgot how cool that final fight scene was when I like rewatched the movie. I was just like, oh yeah, this actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Riz, what about you? What is your broad strokes of the Raimi trilogy?
I specifically watched the first one probably 100 times. Whenever there was like a family friend gathering or something like that, we would always put that movie on. And 2 probably also watched 100 times. 3 legit watched just once, never again. Don't plan to watch it again. Even with this like stellar review we just got, still don't want to see that again.
Now, especially after watching all these other superhero movies that we've been given in these past 10 years, I promise you, I'm not saying you're gonna love it, because it has the problems. But when it's not directly compared or following up to the first two, when it's just like its own movie, I think you're going to like the way you look, bro. I guarantee it.
I can't just see it as its own movie, though. It's hard to do that.
It is hard.
In the third movie of a trilogy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I agree a lot with what Glenn said, because like I have been a staunch 3 hater for a long time. I just think this movie's a mess. But after kind of sitting on it, maturing, going to college, doing all these things as an adult, I agree with what Glenn said. This movie is wacky. It's so weird. Like, I remember there's just like parts of this movie that I just like straight up forgot happened. Like when Peter's going through like the douchebag like montage, and he takes Gwen Stacy to the jazz club that MJ works at, and he does the whole Ron Burgundy like, oh, I can never play jazz flute thing, but he just starts dancing. And I'm just like, this is so fucking stupid, but it's funny. And I'm just like, I like that these actors are just kind of like letting it hang loose. Like, you know, I like that everybody's just kind of like, you know, cheesing it up to the cameras. The relationship between Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson is continued to infuriate me all these years later, because I'm just gonna come out and say it. Mary Jane sucks. She sucks in these trilogies. She cheats on her boyfriend with Spider-Man. She cheats on her fiance with Peter, and I think also as Spider-Man. And also she cheats on Peter with Harry, who has amnesia.
Hold on, we're gonna have to get something straight here, all right? For this courtroom, we're counting an alter ego as a separate cheating at this point. You're saying she cheated with Peter, but she also cheated with Spider-Man.
Oh, that counts.
It counts.
I'm all for this. I'm all for that. You cheat on me with a superhero, and he's wearing a costume? That's double, bro.
Yeah, and I'm not excusing Peter of, like, you know, any sort of malpractice either, because he literally just shows up to the town hall ceremony. It's like, hey, Gwen Stacy, you want to kiss me? And I'm just like, bro, your girlfriend is right there. You spent 2.5 movies.
He was under the influence at the time. You can't use Spider-Man 3 to take down Peter Parker's character, all right? He was under the influence. He was not himself, okay? All right, Your Honor? My
Okay,
client.
that's a lot of Spider-Man 3 excuses I'm hearing.
I'm here to defend my client. Spider-Man 3 did nothing wrong, and I will go down with this shit, bro.
Definitely did something wrong.
By the way, one of the more underrated castings in that movie is Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
Fails in comparison to Emma Stone. But you guys wouldn't know that because you haven't seen those movies. But
Those
I
movies
think she does a pretty.
are all right, but wait, hold on. I want to say one thing. So, if you could put any blemishes on the original trilogy outside of like the Venom stuff in 3, there are some liberties that they took with the source material that is a little.
Yes.
It's a little bad, and they try to fix that with some of the following movies. So, for example, in the comic book, Gwen Stacy is Superman is Spider-Man's. Quick, we're gonna take another detour. Quick aside, all right? Spider-Man. While we're on the topic here, my cousin pointed out to me when I was a kid and ruined Spider-Man for me when he was like, "Dude, Spider-Man is just a Superman ripoff," and I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And he's like, "All right, let me paint this picture for you, okay? First of all, they both wear red and blue," and I'm like, "All right, that's not really that bad, dude. What do you mean?" And he's like, "All right, Superman's a reporter for the Daily Planet. Spider-Man, he's a photographer for the Daily Bugle." Okay.
Whoa.
It's the same thing. They both have dead parents. Great powers, great responsibility. Pretty sure that's even a line. Pretty sure that's a line that Jor-El tells his young son while he's shipping him to Earth, FedExing him to Earth. But anyway, we'll go back. We're gonna forget the whole Spooperman thing. Forget it. I just had to put in my Johnny DC points while I'm here. So some of the liberties they took with the Spider-Man movies, like the first 3. That was kind of maybe some of the stuff that annoyed me, especially back then, because I was a little less like open to creative liberties with superhero movies as a big fan of like the comic books and the source material. So Gwen Stacy was like the original girlfriend for Peter Parker, and he doesn't meet Mary Jane until he starts working like as an adult later on in life. And Gwen Stacy dies in the comic books, and it's like a big moment for Spider-Man's character development, which they didn't do in the movies. They did well in the original trilogy. They did the opposite. Like
we'll talk. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
But
yeah,
I thought those movies were trash.
They are garbage. No, but anyway. Look, so yeah, they did Mary Jane first, and then they introduced Gwen Stacy in the third movie. And like, it's weird because some of these characters in the comic books, they're only known for dying and what they contribute to the story through death. So the whole time I'm watching Spider-Man 3, I'm like, all right, you just introduced this girlfriend late after we already have this relationship with Mary Jane. And then she doesn't even die. She's just here to be called that for no reason. Like, she could have just been called something else and not have ruined anything. You know, there's like some little things like that. But overall, I'm defending Spider-Man 3, okay?
Yeah, to me, Gwen Stacy being in the movie at all, it just felt like one of those like small references.
Yeah.
Like just a reference,
it's like
not
pointless.
like
exactly.
important
it's
plot.
Yeah. As opposed to like being an important character development thing, which is what it was. And it's funny because they even borrowed from that scene in the first movie when he's at the end of the movie, when he's like holding the train cars or whatever on the bridge.
Yeah, the train cars.
That's how she dies in the original comic books, like in that exact same scenario. So I was like, this is so odd. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I love Gwen Stacy. She's one of my favorite like heroines in Marvel comics, and I felt like my girl got done dirty. Again, it like canon wise, it like kind of doesn't make any sense for her to be there. Actually, I think no, they're in college by the time the third movie's out, so that does track. I think.
Would that have traumatized a young Riz who went to the movie theaters? He just sees Spider-Man's girlfriend die in the movie. Maybe that's why they didn't do it. They're like, there's gonna be Riz, and a bunch of people like Riz who are 4 years old.
Spider-Man 3 was like 2000 what?
No, I'm talking about in the first one. I'm talking about in the first one. Like maybe they went with Mary Jane instead because they just wanted to avoid like killing a character on screen. They're like, you know what? Let's just not do that. There's gonna be like 3-year-olds here, man. Like, let's not do that.
The death wouldn't have traumatized me, but my parents then not watching superhero movies with me as a result, that would have traumatized me.
Yeah, That's sure.
Valid. Yeah, I agree with a lot of those broad strokes. Again, these first 3 movies are pivotal, and I think I would like to pivot the conversation to kind of talk about our man of the hour, Toby Mcguire, as a whole. Like I said, in case you've lived under a rock for the last year and a half, and you haven't heard any of the casting rumors of what is expected to pop up in Spider-Man No Way Home, like we mentioned, they're bringing back Willem Dafoe to reprise his role as Norman Osborn. They are bringing back Alfred Molina to reprise his role as Dr. Otto Octavius from Spider-Man 2. And before we move on, we have to talk about how great that movie is before we
Yeah.
move on. But yeah, so what are our thoughts here of Toby Mcguire? As you know, as we know, they're bringing back older villains. There's been the talk of the live action Spider-Verse, kind of, rummaging around ever since the casting started being announced and how big of a smash hit Into the Spider-Verse was. So what are our thoughts in general about Mr. Mcguire here?
I'll start.
Go for it.
He just is Spider-Man in my head. Like, it's probably just because, those were the movies I saw when I was younger. But I don't know. When I think of Spider-Man, I think of Toby Mcguire.
That's valid. Glenn, your counter argument?
I couldn't have said it better myself. He's the GOAT. I don't care what anyone says, man. And so I have a lot to say about this because, like, again, I'm a huge comic book fan, and like I've seen a lot of different actors play these characters, like not just Spider-Man, but all the heroes that I really like and stuff. And it's interesting how, like, first of all, the first guy to get it right has already like an inherent buff. Like he's already kind of like has an advantage because you get to like define that in everybody's brain. Like for me and Riz, when I think of Spider-Man, like as in not in the comic books, but like, human form, to me is Tobey Maguire. And when I think of Superman, I think of Chris Reeve. And like when I think of Batman, I think of, Michael Keaton and Christian Bale because they did it the best, and Michael Keaton did it first. But like the other thing about this is that I actually think Tom Holland is actually better than Tobey Maguire on paper because he actually looks more like what Peter Parker looks like in the comic books. Yes. And like Tobey Maguire, like I remember you joked about this a while ago. I allowed you to besmirch the original trilogy just for the moment when you said that, like, if you think about it, they're shooting these high school scenes in the first Spider-Man movie, and he's definitely like pushing 30. Like he's like, no way.
Tobey Maguire was 40 when he took Spider-Man
Flash
1.
Thompson, imagine that guy going to your high school.
Oh my God. I'm like, yo, like this is an AARP high school, bro. Like what is going on? So like now looking back, it's pretty funny because it's clearly like everyone is way older than high school. But like, yeah, the reason why I think that Tobey Maguire is better than Tom Holland is because the movies and the stories in those movies were better. And I think you cared about him more in these movies. So even though Tom Holland looks more the part, and he, in some ways you could say his character is a little bit more like what Spider-Man is on paper, to me, Tobey Maguire was that perfect balance. Like I actually thought he was pretty corny and funny when he needed to be, but I also took him seriously as like a person, and I also like felt bad for him and all that stuff. And then, he also was awesome in the suit, and they have all the cool action scenes and all that stuff. So yeah, to me, Tobey Maguire he's going to be Spider-Man forever. I don't think I'm ever going to get to a point where I can accept someone else being fully covered in that mask and me having to pretend it's Tobey Maguire.
You know what? Listen, as a how do I put this? I agree with everything you guys said. I have to put respect on the legacy of Tobey Maguire. He took the comic book movie genre, carried it on his spider back, and carried it to the promised land. Because, like you mentioned, if it wasn't for how successful these movies are, who knows what happens down the line? That could have been the last hurrah for comic book movies, and we're still talking about them rebooting the Fantastic Four every 5 years.
But the Fantastic 0-4. They have 4, dude. They have 4 fantastically horrible movies. Like they're literally.
Wait, there's actually 4 of them?
Yes, there's 4 of them.
Is there 4 of them?
All right, let me educate you, Kyle. You call yourself a Marvel guy and like all this stuff, but you don't know about the cheesy, low-budget Fantastic Four movie from the 90s, bro.
Oh my God, you're right.
If you watch it, it's like it's a horror movie. Yeah, it was like a really bad, low-budget C-tier movie, dude. It's horrible.
So this is not the one with like Chris Evans as
No, that was
the Human Torch.
right. That's technically that's the second one, and then there's like 2 in that series, and then they tried to reboot it with Michael B. Jordan and a couple other actors, and that was another just 0-4, bro. They cannot hit anything.
I gotta say though, the fast track to getting famous in the MCU is to be the Human Torch in a Fantastic Four movie, though. So.
Yeah.
I want to add something to like seeing Toby as Spider-Man. You know how you said on paper, like he's younger Spider-Man in the comics. So my introduction to Spider-Man was the '90s animated cartoon, and from that, I think Peter Parker was even older. Like he was like, I don't remember if he was done with college or he was in grad school or something. He was definitely older. So in my head, Tom Holland matches even less.
That's kind of true. I think for me, the cartoon was also part of it. And the comic books, like, in the 90s, the comic books weren't really centered around his, like, young life. That's, like, where it started. But, yeah, it was always... I was used to seeing him as an adult. I didn't like the cartoon. They make him, like... He looks huge. Like, he doesn't look like a small guy. He looks like he's, like, a freaking lineman or something, like, for the Patriots.
He definitely works out every day.
Yeah.
You know, gets his protein.
Yeah.
He's definitely swole as hell, but yeah, listen, I have to put respect on the legacy of Toby Mcguire as Spider-Man. I will say I'm a little spoiled by these newer movies because, you know, I'm like where you said you're a little bit more accustomed to Spider-Man as, you know, the adult who's already been Spider-Man for a few years. A lot of my media with Spider-Man was when obviously, you know, he was like still in high school and such. And also like what bothers me about both these movies is the lack of emotion in these suits is actually killing me. Like, I understand that, you know, as we've moved into a more high-tech, you know, era when it comes to comic book movies, nobody's wearing practical suits anymore. It's mostly CGI. I get that. I do, you know, it was nice to see, you know, someone have to put on a spandex suit with like a weird round crown thing on the top of your head to keep the shape of your head. But at the same time, it's like, you know, watching Spider-Man's eyes move when he emotes, like, you know, watching, you know, just seeing emotion on the face of Spider-Man and these like pressing moments. It was really hard to not like, you know, notice that shit when I'm watching these movies. I think of the scene in Spider-Man 2 where where Peter loses his powers and he has to take the elevator down from the top of this building that he lands on. And he's like talking to this guy in the elevator, and like you can very clearly hear that, like, you know, his voice is muffled because of the suit that he's wearing, and like there's like no emotion in his face. And like, you know, you're trying to like you know, feel for Peter in these like really tense situations. And it's hard because there's no, you know, there's no emotion anything that he does. Does that matter much? Because no, his mask gets destroyed in every movie that he does. So like eventually you get to see Toby Mcguire cry. But I think that was the hardest part for me going back to these movies. But I have to, you know, put respect on his name. He was the first, you know, to do it. And that hand-to-hand combat scene at the end of Spider-Man 1 with the Green Goblin, one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in a comic book movie. Like, to this day, that whole sequence still is a home run for me.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Yeah. It's I love the little before Norman gets impaled by his glider. Like the little, like I gotta say the biggest issue I have, you know, outside of the fact that Toby Mcguire is literally pushing 40 when he's supposed to be playing a high schooler. But outside of that, I'd say the other biggest issue I have is that Toby Mcguire is just kind of an awkward dude. Like, I'd say the best aspect of what he brings to the Peter Parker argument is that he is such a dweeb throughout the entirety of this movie. He's such a geek. He's having these like fake conversations in his brain about how he's going to talk to MJ, and then he realizes he misses the bus. Like, you know, he's just so awkward. And even when he's like trying to be cool, it's so awkward. And like, he's like, whenever like MJ and like Peter have these like, you know, long conversations and they're trying to talk to each other, I'm just like cringing. I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I hear you, Enrique. Like, you know, that whole scene when they're like chatting in the middle of the street. Great meme, by the way, also. Great memes have come out of these movies all these years later.
The best memes come from the first three. Don't even lie. It's not even close. It's a blowout.
It's true. It's really not even close.
The memes on the first three movies are literally just Bonesaw is ready. Like that's just already Randy
Or the,
Savage already beat
or-
everybody.
Or the Norman Osborn one, like, I'm a bit of a fucking idiot myself.
Oh,
I forgot that came from this movie. I was just like, where's the shot of Willem Dafoe from? I'm just like, oh shit, that's Spider-Man 1. It's really
Yeah.
fucking funny.
But to your point, I agree with everything you're saying. Like he is awkward, but that's kind of why it's special, because like the thing that makes Spider-Man as a character different from other superheroes is that he's not Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, who like, you know, Bruce Wayne is a rich dude who's really cool and dark or whatever. And, you know, Clark Kent is just a normal guy from Kansas, but he's, you know, he's a strapping man and he's obviously huge or whatever. And like, he's a humble farm boy, whatever. The thing that made Spider-Man cool was that he was a loser. And then he's given these powers. It's like the last person you would ever think should ever have powers to be a hero gets these powers. And like, that's kind of what made him cool. So to me, watching the original 3 movies, I was like, that's what makes it special, is that, you know, some people, I'm not going to say it myself, they relate to that guy who's cringy all the time. And like, I think if anything, we can get into the other movies afterwards, but that's one of the things I think the other movies get wrong. Like every single one of them after the first 3, like they don't really get, I mean, look, if it's to your taste, that's fine. I mean, we could all like different things or whatever. But for me personally, I'm like, I just feel like that's who that character is. And every time you don't portray him as that, or you make him even slightly cooler than that, he loses his Spider-Man feeling for me personally.
Yeah, don't worry. Everybody else is going to get their just desserts. Everybody's getting it tonight in this podcast.
I think Tom Holland does that though. Maybe not as well as Toby Mcguire, but he has those moments where he's like, you know, awkward or anxious, like unsure what to do.
It's weird because it's in such a modern. Maybe it's because I'm just older now, so maybe that's the more modern version of the same thing. But like when they did it in Civil War, when they introduced the new Spider-Man in that movie, they nailed it. He was such a dork in that movie. Like Tony Stark's in his bedroom and he's just like trying to hide his Spider-Man stuff. And Tony Stark's like, dude, I saw the thing in the closet and like this and this and that. And they perfectly nailed it. But then in the 2 movies after that, he's too cool, man. He's like, Tom Holland is too cool to be Spider-Man, in my opinion. He's like, he acts cool. He looks cool. If that guy was at your high school, you're telling me that guy wouldn't, you know, get every chick in your high school? He's too cool. He's playing Nathan Drake, bro. He's cool. Toby Mcguire didn't just go after Spider-Man and just go, yeah, I'm playing, you know, Johnny Bravo in a movie. Like, that's not happening.
You know what? That's valid. You know, I
maybe
think
that's why they have Zendaya to like showcase the height difference. To, you know.
To keep
Short King.
The manlet.
Oh man! So before we move on from here, again, I think we have to talk about Spider-Man 2. You know, the more, you know, we've been disrespectfully not talking about this movie as much. This movie's great. You know, it stands. You know, again, I've always put this in my, you know, my pantheon of best comic book movies ever, and it still stands up. It's still a fantastic film. Alfred, everybody is, you know, batting 1,000 and throwing heat the entirety of the movie. That train scene, for some reason, I don't know why I thought this when I watched this movie again. I always thought the train scene happens way earlier in the film, and it wasn't until I watched it I was like, oh yeah, this happens like pretty much near the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But you know, Alfred Molina is absolutely great as Doc Ock. You know, again, rightfully coming back, you know, to reprise the role of this character. Great cameo by Joel McHale as one of the bank tellers in this movie.
Oh, really?
Which I totally forgot about. Yeah, he's the bank teller that tells Aunt May and Peter they can't get a loan.
Oh wow!
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I like completely forgot about
I'm
that.
literally watching it in my head right now. Hold on, let me rewind that.
But
that's a good casting decision. Making him the asshole, like
it was very funny. But yeah, everybody has a moment to shine in this movie. You know, obviously the Harry finding out that, you know, Peter is does he find out in this movie that he's Spider-Man? I'm trying to remember if I remember.
Yeah, right at the end, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, so that happens, and then, you know, him and Mary Jane are playing Will They Won't They. One of my favorite moments in the movie is when Aunt May hits Doc Ock in the head with her cane.
Oh yeah.
That's that is still incredibly funny. But I don't know how, again, you guys haven't seen these movies as recently as I have, but does this movie still stand up to you as like one of the best in the biz?
Free. If it's not in your top 5, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, you're capping.
Yeah, I mean,
Best villain in, I don't know, every superhero movie ever.
it's
Are there any
definitely up
villains better
there.
than Alfred Molina?
The Joker, chill, bro.
If we're talking in just like the Marvel like pantheon,
He's definitely
like,
up there though. No, he's right.
He's definitely up there. Like, there's Loki, there's
True.
there's Killmonger. I would even put Michael Keaton's Vulture up there as like a top fiver. He's pretty good.
I'll allow you to put Michael Keaton in any top 5.
He's
he's
man.
Batman.
My man is for the birds, literally.
But Spider-Man 2,
yeah.
It's the GOAT. I'm sorry, but like, bro, to this day, this is the best Marvel movie, and I don't care what anyone says. It's better than Age of Ultron. I mean, obviously, it's better than Age of Ultron.
Oh.
It's better than Infinity War. It's better than Endgame. It's better than any Marvel movie, period. And it's not part of the MCU, which is why they're going back to it right now because of how good it is. They're trying to like make it part of the MCU, bro. But yeah, this movie still holds up for me, and like this movie is just top 3 superhero movies of all time. Like for me personally, it's the original Superman, The Dark Knight, and Spider-Man 2 in any order that you want. Those 3 movies are just better than every other superhero movie. The casting for Doc Ock was great. There's also just so many like great action moments. There's great story elements, like dramatic stuff. And then there's also just such good funny moments. Like, dude, that moment where he's losing his powers and he finally just gives up on being Spider-Man. And he's walking around, he's finally doing good in his classes. Like he's not just, up all night being Spider-Man and being tired in class and all that stuff. And then like everything's going well for him. Like, and then he just like, he's walking and they're playing Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. He like stuffs his face with the hot dog and they freeze frame on it when the cops pass by. Like moments like that in this movie are like, that has nothing to do with like cool action Spider-Man stuff. That's just cool like character stuff. And it's sick, man. I could watch this movie a million more times. I almost want to say it's a perfect movie. Like
pizza time.
The pizza thing in the beginning. Oh my God. It's so great.
Funny.
It's just great.
So before we move on to why, I get on my soapbox about Amazing Spider-Man, we're going to rank these movies 3 out of 5 pizza time, or excuse me, from a 1 to pizza time to 5 pizza time of how important these movies are before you watch them. I'm just going to go out and say, I think the first 2 movies are like 5 out of 5 pizza time importance because both of these characters are returning in some capacity. So, you're going to have to at least like understand, the relationship between, Alfred Molina to Spider-Man. And we talked criminally little about Willem Dafoe. He's the GOAT, obviously, like we mentioned. He is the Green Goblin. No disrespect to Dane DeHaan, except all the disrespect to Dane DeHaan, because that was fucking atrocious what they did with the Green Goblin and the Amazing Spider-Man. But Willem Dafoe's the GOAT. I would say Spider-Man 3 is like a 2 on the importance scale, because the only thing you need to understand is that the spoiler alert, the Sandman is appearing in this movie, though we don't know if it's just a CGI Sandman or if Thomas Hayden Church will actually like appear as himself as Flint Marko in this movie. But that movie, he is at least returning in some capacity. Rest in peace, Eric Foreman. Nowhere to be seen.
Oh,
No
he's
Way
not going to
Home,
be
so.
in No Way Home.
Yeah,
Who's Eric Foreman?
That's
Topher Grace.
Topher Grace.
Oh,
That's his
yeah,
character
duh.
from that '70s show.
Oh,
so.
right, of course.
Great show.
Thank God that he's not coming back, bro. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Parker, I need this.
Yeah. It's, what? That's not even fully his fault, man. They just like they cast the wrong person for that role because without getting too far into it, what ruined Spider-Man 3 was that Sam Raimi didn't want to do Venom and the producers forced him to do it. So that's why it feels forced in the movie, because like they had a movie done and then they forced him to like squeeze Venom into it. And he was going to have Ben Kingsley as the Vulture and Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, and that was supposed to be enough. and it would have been great because the stuff that's there is really good. But yeah,
Wait,
man.
you said Ben Kingsley is the Vulture?
Yeah.
That would have been sick.
Oh, I've
Yeah.
heard that, and oh my god, what's the guy's name? Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank. But keep talking.
But yeah, so that's the stuff that ruined 3. That's the stuff, the only blemish on the entire, original trilogy's entire thing is that. But yeah, like I think if ranking the 3 movies myself, I'd say the first one, 5 out of 5, you have to watch it. Especially, they're bringing back Green Goblin. 2, you got to watch. It's the best Marvel movie ever. So if you're going to pay money to go see the other one, you might as well see what an amazing Spider-Man movie really looks like before you go into this new one.
Yeah.
And the third one, who knows? We don't know, right? So I'm not sure, but honestly, I would say just watch it anyway because it's Spider-Man 3. It's actually pretty good, man.
Yeah.
All right? Watch it
Honestly,
for the J. Jonah Jameson scenes at minimum. Every one of those first 3 movies has classic J. Jonah Jameson lines in it.
Real quick, the trailer for No Way Home, there's a trailer for No Way Home that does reveal a little bit of a plot hole as to why Sandman is there, because Doctor Strange makes reference that, all of these people that are returning met their demise fighting Spider-Man, and Flint Marco doesn't die in Spider-Man 3, so I don't know how they're going to explain that one. Neither does Dr. Kurt Connors from The Amazing Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. Yeah, no, he doesn't die in the first movie. He just goes to like crazy jail.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a weird one. Riz, what are your thoughts here?
I definitely agree with the 5s, but I'm gonna say Spider-Man 3 is optional. I'm giving that shit a 0.
Also, real quick, I mentioned this to Riz off pod. I completely forgot that Dr. Kurt Connors is in this movie as like just a college professor.
Yeah, just a teacher.
Yeah, and he has the arm chopped off. Everyone thought like we were waiting for that to turn into the Lizard, like over the course of the 2-3 movies, and then it never happened.
Yeah, there is the canceled Spider-Man 4, and I've heard the rumors of Ben Kingsley as Vulture, but this one also has John Malkovich as Adrian Toomes.
Oh, that would have been godlike.
Yeah, and they would have brought back Dylan Baker to play the Lizard, and Anne Hathaway as Felicia Hardy,
Right.
which would have been sick.
Yeah.
I'm ready for Black Cat to appear in one of these things. That would have been sick. But we now close the door on the. We've talked waxed poetically about the the Raimi trilogy
About
for
the
good
goat.
reason. I will now get on my soapbox as to why The Amazing Spider-Man is a good movie and why Andrew Garfield is the best actor to play Spider-Man.
Cringe.
I will go on my soapbox here. Andrew Garfield, again, after Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man was canned from a 4th movie, which was supposed to come out like 2011, like 4 years, 4 years after like Spider-Man 3 came out, which is weird for a sequel movie. But the franchise is then rebooted in 2012 with the Social Network's very own Andrew Garfield portraying the role as the titular Peter Parker through 2 films, which features the likes of Dr. Kurt Connors as the Lizard, played by Reef Ifris, if I believe I'm pronouncing this gentleman's name right, and fighting against the main villain of Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Max Dillon, a.k.a. Electro, a.k.a. Blue Jamie Foxx, which is terrible.
Cringe.
Blue?
Yeah, they make him
like
blue.
blue for some reason.
His skin is blue. There's choices there. So now, before I get on my soapbox and talk to you guys about this, do you guys have any knowledge or experience with these films at all? Did you try? Was there an attempt?
0 attempts. All I know is that Jamie Foxx has really bad hair.
yeah. That's you're not wrong there.
Oh man, where do I start with this one, man? Dude. All right, so you guys already know if you've been listening. I liked Spider-Man 3. So if I even like that's how much I like the original trilogy. Okay, so then like this was one of the first examples of them rebooting something. Like you got to remember, the Spider-Man trilogy happened early in like this whole superhero genre thing. So coming back in the 2000s, so there weren't really any reboots yet. Like the only reboot that had happened was Batman Begins in 2005, and that was like there weren't Batman movies for like close to 10 years or something. So Spider-Man 3 came out when? Like in 2011 or
Spider-Man 3?
Yeah, the
It
2008?
came out 2007. It came
Yeah,
out.
okay. And then the Amazing Spider-Man came out in 2010 or 2011?
2012.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, like 4 years later, I felt like that was such a short amount of time. And in that amount of time, you're expecting a new Spider-Man movie. We were thinking, oh, it's probably gonna be, another Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. It's like, nope. Now we're doing this. And then like it came out post Dark Knight, which I remember after that, everyone just thought, oh, what you have to do is make all your superheroes edgy and dark. So I saw the trailer and like they're trying to make Spider-Man edgy and dark, and Andrew Garfield's not corny and lame and cringy. He's like edgy and outcasty and cool. And like, I'm like, dude, girls want to bang that guy. He can't be Spider-Man. Okay. Like, I'm sorry. So I just didn't want to see it. And they hurt my feelings rebooting that franchise, bro. Like it was, I literally was like protesting not going to this movie, bro. So yeah. And then the whole CG light show, like the lizard in the trailers, like it literally just looked like a PS3 game. Like it did not look real. It did not look real at all to me. So yeah, I still haven't seen it, and I refuse to see it. And then the one I guess we'll wait until we get to it. But the one after this one, I'm really glad I didn't see it. So
All right.
please try to defend yourself, please, right now. I need to hear this.
This is me getting on my soapbox right now. So my history with this movie is I went to go see this movie without the knowledge that they rebooted Spider-Man. I actually had no idea.
How is that possible? How is that possible?
I was hanging out with one of my friends. This movie came out. Spider-Man usually comes out around the time of my birthday, so I think I had off for this day for whatever I was doing. So my friend and I were like, "What do you want to do?" I'm just like, "Oh, you want to go to the movies?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, there's a new Spider-Man movie that came out." I was like, "Oh cool, I love Spider-Man." And I sit down and I'm just like, "What the fuck is this? Who are these people? Like, what's happening?" Like, I had no idea that they rebooted the franchise.
That's gotta be like one of the greatest feelings. I wish I could have seen that. Like someone going, "Wait, what? Like, what is going on?"
So you thought you were going in to see Toby Mcguire?
Yeah, I did. I was not like as involved on the internet at that time as I was when I was, now. But yeah, I went to go see this movie, and I was like, huh, that was a choice. That was kind of weird. Fast forward a few years, I mature a little bit. I understand more of what the concept of a reboot is. And I will say this. I think Amazing Spider-Man 1 is legitimately a good movie. And I'll tell you why. Number one, as my gripes with Andrew Garfield fall into the category is that he is too cool to be playing Spider-Man, first and foremost. He's also way too old. He's like 29 when this movie comes out. So he's, again, we talked about Flash Gordon being in your high school then. The Flash Gordon in this movie is just as bad. Like, literally, it's like hilarious how they try to sell this to you. So Andrew Garfield has the exact opposite problem of Toby Mcguire, is that he's too smooth, he's too cool. That does, make for a more interesting Spider-Man because he is way more quippy than Toby Mcguire is. So the humor is a lot more fun. I like my Spider-Man when he's like, like before we talk about Tom Holland, where he's like, in the fight scene in Civil War, he's like, "You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude!" Like, I love those little like in references to when Spider-Man's fighting. There's a great joke about shiny metal knives, in this movie. I think this movie has some of the best web swinging from a Spider-Man perspective. This is the last movie, I believe. This franchise is one of the last ones to use like actual stuntmen to like be Spider-Man. I think there's like 7 dudes that were like the stuntmen for the swinging stuff. So it's practical. It looks cool. Emma Stone is hot. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Full bias there. Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy is a knock it out of the park. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Hang on the rim. That's great casting. I thought she was awesome in these films. Don't give a shit about the Lizard personally. That's like one of like the weaker villains in Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery. But it was fun. It was a different approach than the regular Green Goblin stuff. And I legitimately think Andrew Garfield is the best actor to play Spider-Man. He's a legitimately good actor. I just watched his new movie, Tick, Tick, Boom. He's awesome. And I thought he brought some real drama and pressure, to this role. This movie's also star-studded with like really famous people. Like Sally Field is in this movie. Martin Sheen's in this movie. Dennis Leary's in this movie. So there's a lot of like really famous people that are littered throughout this film. So there's, they're at least like not slumping on the talent aspects of it. Now, does it make for a great movie? Not really, but I still think it's passable. It's good. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is dog shit. That movie sucks. It does have a really funny visual gag in that movie where like they hit Jamie Foxx with a fireman's hose, and then when it cuts back to Andrew Garfield, he's wearing a fireman's hat, and I think it's really funny because I think they brought in like actual comedy writers to like write that movie. But that movie's a mess. It falls into the same problem that Spider-Man 3 does. It tries to set up too many villains. What is Paul Giamatti doing in this movie? What is oh yeah, Paul Giamatti. So I will now transition to why The Amazing Spider-Man 2 sucks. They try to set up the Sinister Six in these movies.
Yeah, I was about to say
that is essentially what the gist of these movies are. In the post-credit scene for Amazing Spider-Man 1, you're with Dr. Kurt Connors in some insane asylum, and he is met with who is known in Marvel Comics as the Gentleman. I forgot the actor who plays him, but he's basically like one of the guys that puts together the Sinister Six. So they start talking about putting a team together, yada, yada, yada. They're like setting the seeds for that. And then at the end of the second movie, actually in the middle of the second movie, you get a look into like a secret section of Oscorp where there is a very clearly like vulture wings and like a Doc Ock backpack, like the exoskeleton that's like hanging on the wall, and rhino armor that's like put behind glass to display. So in the post-credit scene, you learn that Dane DeHaan, who is playing Harry Osborn, becomes this movie's Green Goblin. He's met by the same gentleman. He's like, "Oh, we're putting a team together. How many do you need?" And he doesn't say exactly 6, but he says enough. So
6.
So at the end of this movie, they introduce Paul Giamatti as the Rhino, which is they introduce him.
Okay.
He's like in the beginning of the movie. He's just like a typical like Russian gangster, and then like Spider-Man like deals with him and then goes to high school graduation or whatever. But yeah, there's problems with this movie where they're trying to set up for something way farther out into the future, and this movie also deals with a little bit more of like Peter's like actual parents. Like they have a Richard Parker in this movie, which is like again an interesting take. I hate watching Uncle Ben die again. It sucks. Rip Martin Sheen. I will say Andrew Garfield is the best part of these movies, whereas The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is fine and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 sucks. So, you guys got any thoughts on this as to like why you think these movies are so bad?
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Is J.K. Simmons in these movies?
So, he's not.
Next.
Yeah.
There is no J. Jonah Jameson in this movie. They only show him in an email address where Peter is again a freelancer for the Daily Bugle and he's sending in pictures of Spider-Man to make money.
Of course.
Wait, so he's at the Bugle and there's no Jake.
He's not at the Bugle.
Jonah
He's
Jameson?
emailing the Bugle.
Okay.
So there is no Betty Brant. There is no actual like Daily Bugle that like he physically goes to. But I think that a lot of my problems with this film, the biggest one for me is the Gwen Stacy stuff. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about this.
It sounds like the reason you saw this movie, and then you're like, they kill her? What?
It's not the fact that they kill her. It's like because we
she
mentioned
was
how
so hot though.
It's not about how they kill. It's not about that they kill her. It's how they do it. Now you mentioned before how these the Raimi trilogy took their liberties with some of the source material. In the comic books, when Gwen Stacy dies, her body hits a body of water, if I remember correctly. So it is not known to the reader
Bodied.
it is not known to the reader.
Literally bodied.
Yeah, literally. So like, the scene happens where like Gwen Stacy's falling, the famous shot. Spider-Man goes to try to save her. He shoots her with her web, and you're not sure if it's the impact of the web snapback that breaks her neck or her hitting the water that breaks her neck. So, Peter, you as a reader are left to like, leave that up to to suspend your disbelief is the phrase they use. And, Peter has to fight with that conflict a lot in the comics of, did I kill her? Like, was she dead already? Like, I don't really know what's going on here. In the movie, they just straight up show her body hit the ground and there's recoil. So like, it's pretty much like confirmed that Peter kills Gwen Stacy because he just doesn't catch her in time.
Oh.
And That made me
Yikes.
upset. You know, watching Emma Stone's CGI body like bounce like that, kind of sus. It sucks.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it really made me upset. I still think Andrew Garfield again is too cool. The way he kind of like bounces into his powers is like less organic in these movies. There's no, you know, up and away web and like him like shooting his you know, his hand into the abyss. He basically just like Jackie Chan's his way into a fight on the subway where like he's accidentally beating these guys up without realizing it. So like he kind of like stumbles into his powers into a different way. I do like that they keep it authentic to the comics where he has like actual like webbed shooters that he builds instead of like spider blood, like I guess of what's coming out of his wrists. So that aspect of it is cool. And I like that I like that they really lean into like the sciencey part of Peter Parker because, you know, he's a dweeb. He's one of the smartest kids in his school. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of like science discussion, especially in like the second movie of like, oh, like how do you, you know, conduct electricity? So, you know, where these movies have, you know, for every good thing in these movies that happen, there's a few things that just really make me upset. So
Yeah, I'm upset about the costume, dude. Like the
What's
redesign
wrong with the
for
costume?
for me, it's like if you actually look at it, like next to, you know, the Toby Mcguire costume or the Tom Holland costume, it's like the least Spider-Man looking costume. Like they tried to make it very like it looks like he's wearing like tire, like it's literally like rubber, like it, and it doesn't really have the pattern, and then the eyes are like gold instead of white, and like I don't know, man. He just looked so weird in that movie. Like that didn't look like Spider-Man to me. It was just so. It's like they were just trying to make it so street and like edgy. And again, like that's the whole problem with the whole movie is for me is like I don't know. I still to this day don't want to see it. But the fact that like the highest endorsement you can give it is it's fine, and the other one sucks. Like definitely don't want to see it. But question, I want to ask you this, Kyle.
sure.
So don't compare Spider-Man 3 to the first two movies. Compare them to the other two movies that came afterwards. Is Spider-Man 3 better than The Amazing Spider-Man? Be honest.
I don't think it's better than The Amazing Spider-Man. I think it's better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen it, but I know you're wrong about that, and I haven't seen it.
What? That's crazy bias. You haven't even seen it.
Yeah, you're like
I want to see that movie, man.
You're like Peter and Mary Jane. We're like you don't even see the fact that she's upset, and then she
It's
leaves
not,
you at the restaurant.
guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not that I don't want to see those movies. It's
Yes,
that
it is.
It's that I literally can't. It's that I can't put myself through it, dude. They rebooted my guy like 4 years later. Like that is just blasphemy, bro.
Yeah, that is too soon.
That's way too soon.
I will say it's cool that there's like emphasis on the lizard because growing up on the 90s cartoon, he was like a huge part of that show.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
So that's cool. That's like that and Emma Stone are the only two reasons I have right now for now seeing it.
So we'll put it on the list, and we'll never watch it. But I will go on a limb and say which of these two. Unfortunately, it sucks because the more important two of these movies is Amazing Spider-Man 2 because it came out very early in the casting that Jamie Foxx is reprising his role as Electro.
Wait, really?
And yeah, they're bringing him back.
Lord.
But listen, as someone who has seen the media, has seen the trailers, has seen the posters that have him in it, head and shoulders better. It is number one, Jamie Foxx is in blue. I'll just go out and say that.
Okay.
Nice.
Number two, he looks a lot more authentic to the comic books, which is fantastic.
Well, can we hold on? Let's talk about that for one split second. Does anybody know what Electro looked like in the comic book? Because he looks horrible. His
Glenn, I promise you, it looks cool. It looks cool. Like we all know the Sinister Six meme. Like that's a really funny meme to have come out of like the older cartoons. Like Electro in the comic books looks fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like I hate his stupid mask.
Like,
I hate his stupid tights.
I bet you him being all blue as Jamie Foxx was probably still better than the comic book. Like that's one of the few times where the source material is really bad, dude. I'm sorry.
Honestly, it was. I will say that. But
yeah.
I will say this though. What they have done with it, it looks way better. Like they made Electro look cool for the first time ever. So I will say that. So unfortunately, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you kind of have to get a gist of who Max Dillon is. But considering that they're like hard rebooting that character as it is in the film, it looks like don't watch it. Just know that
Uh,
Jamie Foxx was Electro in another universe.
If there's one thing Marvel movies are good at now, it's that they know that people haven't seen every single possible movie and know every single reference of the millions of movies in the universe. So like, if any, I'm expecting that like they'll give us a little bit of like a, you know, like a scene that kind of like tells you everything you need to know about these characters before they reintroduce them. Like maybe the Toby Mcguire era characters don't need it, but like they know that we didn't see Amazing Spider-Man, you know, too. Like they know that nobody saw that movie. That movie like was one of the biggest disasters ever. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get some kind of brush up, thank God, because like I'm not watching those movies just to watch this new Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Same.
You don't need to. Reese Ifans is also confirmed to be coming back as the Lizard. It's kind of in the same vein of like, are they actually bringing back the actor to be Dr. Kirk Connors, or if they're just using a CGI lizard throughout the entirety of the movie? Either way, he's there. That's fine. Whether they bring back Paul Giamatti or Dane DeHaan, don't care. Didn't read. Cringe plus ratio plus you're literally the Rhino. It would be a fun little Easter egg if they did it that way. I'm not losing sleep over it. I will say though, just look up if you're on the fence, watch one of the trailers and look how cool Jamie Foxx looks. That's all I'm going to say. So, while we move out of the Amazing Trilogy again, I will be excited to see Andrew Garfield. If he does show up in this film as Spider-Man. I think he's again one of the best actors to play Spider-Man, and it'll be fun. You can't unfortunately have the Spider-Verse without him. So let's move. While we still got some time left, let's move on to the Homecoming trilogy featuring Tom Holland. Now, I feel like if you really want to like get the utmost context on like, if you're coming into this movie cold, I'd watch Civil War and I'd watch the first two Spider-Man films with John Watts. If you want to watch, I would recommend watching the Avengers movies with Tom Holland in it because they're cool. I don't think they're gonna be super important, I guess, but Glenn, you were the one with the loudest voice about Tom Holland as Spider-Man, so I'll let you take the reins first. What are your thoughts of Mr. Holland?
I actually think that he's really good. Maybe he's a little too like handsome, I guess, but especially dude. So I just walked you guys through like, all right, Spider-Man, the original trilogy, goated to me, right? And then I was so butthurt by them rebooting it with Amazing Spider-Man that I didn't even see that movie. I to this day I won't watch it. So I go to see Civil War because I heard Civil War is a good movie, not because like I knew anything about Spider-Man or anything like that. And so anytime that they're going to reboot a character like that, I'm just immediately against it. So when I found out that I'm watching Civil War and then somebody's like, this is the movie that they're going to introduce the MCU version of Spider-Man finally. I'm like, no, man, like I just can't watch someone else do that. It's like watching someone else. Yeah. It's like watching someone else date. It's like watching someone else date your girlfriend. Like you just can't do that. So I'm sitting there and then they get to the scene where they introduce Tom Holland as Spider-Man. And it's the best scene in the whole movie. And not only is it the best scene in the whole movie, but I'm like, wow, this guy is Spider-Man. Like this feels awesome and it's perfect. And so within Civil War, I think that's like the best like scene, a Spider-Man scene outside of the first three movies is that the introduction in Civil War. And then like after that, Homecoming comes out and it's a solid movie. I definitely wouldn't say it's a bad movie, but I don't think it's great. I think Far From Home and Homecoming, they're a little too like funny all the time, and like it's like even Far From Home is like really egregious, where like literally every scene they're just trying to like make you laugh with like the awkward humor, and it's not like Peter's that funny. It's always like all the other characters are just like cartoons, like they're all ridiculous, and like I don't know. I have like mixed feelings about the Homecoming movies because like I think that they have good casting. I just think the movies themselves, they aren't bad. They're just not really great. And like they kind of have a problem that all Marvel movies have for me where I don't really care about the characters enough. Like there's not enough like, sad moments and serious moments where I go, oh, I really feel for this character. Like I'm glad they didn't redo Uncle Ben dying and everything, but that scene in the first movie is part of why you care about anything Spider-Man does. Like, you really feel bad for him, and it's really bad. There's not one scene in those two movies for me where I like really felt like Tom Holland is like, oh man, I'm really pushing for this guy. Like, let's go. Like, it's kind of just, oh, everything's kind of cool, and I kind of can't tell people I'm Spider-Man. But
you're telling me you didn't feel something when that building was on top of him and he's
dude,
like giving himself the pep talk.
yeah. So that scene was the only scene I remember going like, oh, finally, here it is. Like, something's gonna get serious in the MCU. Something's actually gonna happen outside of Endgame and Infinity War. And then it was like literally 5 seconds, and then it goes right back to everything has a bow tie on it, and everything's great, and whatever. And he's kind of cool, but he's they're pretending that he's a dork, and I'm like, I don't know. There's movies just they have like a weird tone where they're not bad movies. The action scenes are pretty cool and everything. His suit looks awesome, like what you said earlier about like they finally found out how to animate his eyes like they do in the comic books. They get really big and they get really small. So cool. He looks so much like the original design for Spider-Man. But yeah, I don't know. The tone of the movies themselves, like the overall movie, they're too funny. They're like a little too one-notey. And one last thing I'll say is like the MCU obviously is a weird complaint because the MCU, everything's about interconnecting everything. And that's part of the appeal of it. But Spider-Man is way too tied to Tony Stark in these movies. Like this is like everyone's tied to each other in a way because they connected everything. But like Captain America doesn't literally exist because of Tony Stark, even though I guess he kind of does because of his dad or whatever. But like this character literally only exists because Tony Stark. Like he's Spider-Man because of Tony Stark. Every time something bad happens, he has to like get an upgrade from Tony Stark. Like everything is so tied to Tony Stark that it almost feels like he's not just Spider-Man. Like I don't know. Like I just wanted him to be Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like in the comic books, it's not like Tony Stark or any other hero is so closely tied to like what makes this hero great. You know what I mean? So for me, I would say that the new movies, if I'm going to grade them, I'd say that the original trilogies are A's all around, with 2 being an S tier.
All
movie.
around.
Yeah, I'm giving 3 an A, baby.
I'm not letting this go.
Amazing Spider-Man, even though I didn't see it, is an F. And Amazing Spider-Man 2 is an F minus. And the Homecoming movies,
not see them?
You don't need to see, bro. I could feel it. My spider sense tells me I can't see that movie. And then the Homecoming movies, I'll give them C. I'll give them both a C. They're not bad. They're not great. There's some really cool stuff in it. But overall, I feel like I don't really need to see them again. And it feels like nothing important happens in those movies. They're just kind of fun. And then you laugh. And then you look forward to the next one. And that's it.
Riz, we watched Spider-Man get birthed in the MCU together.
We did.
We did.
Tony Stark spread his legs and you reached in and grabbed Peter Parker.
Again, one more time for the internet. Riz and I went to go see Civil War with Riz not having seen the previous Avengers movie. So
it's true.
He had no idea.
Me either. I still haven't seen Age of Ultron to this day.
Honestly, you're not missing much.
That is optional, just like Spider-Man 3.
So Riz, what your thoughts overall of the Homecoming movie so far and Tom Holland as Spider-Man?
Okay. So I 100% agree with Glenn about that first scene with Spider-Man and how awesome it was. But that movie is actually one of the biggest reasons why I'm so like anti-trailer, anti-spoiler now. Because
sure, that makes sense.
If I didn't know that Spider-Man was going to be in that movie and I saw that scene, I would have freaked out. Like,
yeah.
That would have been like
when it pans to Queens and you just hear the music start and you're just like, whoa, what are they doing?
Yeah,
what are they doing?
That would have been nuts. Like that scene, we basically saw that whole scene already in trailers.
I avoided the trailers, thank God.
Yeah,
but I did hear about it.
Still, like seeing the actual scene, made it worse. So now, that's kind of why my Twitter, I have a huge mute list. Like I got Spider in there, Spider-Man, Tony Stark, like fucking
Spider
everything.
a Spider in like 7 languages.
I really like how Tom Holland Spider-Man, he's more like quippy.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
Mid fight he'll make these jokes. I really like how awkward he is and the way he talks. I guess that kind of makes me get over the fact that he's so pretty. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel that.
I like the movies, but I wouldn't say they're special. I actually really like Far From Home, just because I'm like a huge Jake Gyllenhaal fan, and I thought Mysterio was done really, really well.
Yeah, Donnie Darko
But
is Mysterio. Perfect casting.
So good.
I just think that that's just a great choice for someone who's like, playing you and ends up being the villain. Like Jake Gyllenhaal's really good.
And the fact that they tie it all back into Iron Man 1 is like crazy. Like that part blew my mind. With like,
well, what's the tie-in?
so like when they're, my least favorite part of Far From Home was when Jake Gyllenhaal goes on like the expose.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
then he starts like explaining everything that happened.
Mhm.
And one of his guys was the scientist that got yelled at by what's the guy's name?
Obadiah.
Obadiah.
Yeah, Obadiah Stane, where he's like, Tony Stark built this in a cave. And he was the scientist that was getting yelled at in Iron Man 1 in that scene. So
Yeah. And like his whole motivation is that like Tony Stark takes credit, or like he took his hologram technology and called it barf, and like he takes credit for stuff, and it's basically like, again, everything's really closely tied to Tony Stark. Even the villain only exists because of Tony Stark. The whole MCU,
yeah,
everybody is connected to Tony Stark. They've been on his payroll. He fired somebody. One guy was his intern, and instead of like going postal and shooting the place up, they just go become supervillains.
Yeah, the real American way to deal with your problems.
My God. They're in Europe. It's different over there. Anyway, I echo a lot of the same sentiments you guys have. Again, I think if I didn't see that trailer for Civil War, I would have shit my pants like right there, frame one. It would have been crazy. I thought, that movie, is still really good. It's a great little dosage of Spider-Man. He's not in it too much. Marissa Tomei is still hot all these years later. She's the best Aunt May. Like, just, I don't know. My bias is showing very clearly. Again, insert the Seinfeld line.
I'm seeing the formula for how Koopa decides what Spider-Man movie he likes. It's like, oh, you don't like Spider-Man 3? Okay, I guess you don't like Bryce Dallas Howard that much. Gotcha.
I like her better as a redhead.
I like her opposite. See, we figured it out.
Yeah,
I like her. I like her opposite Chris Pratt with dinosaurs. Do you fucking mind?
Like, he liked the blue Jamie Foxx more than he liked Bryce Dallas Howard with blonde hair.
All right, listen, don't put words in my mouth, all right?
Dude, I will looking at pictures of blue Jamie Foxx right now. He literally looks like Dr. Manhattan. Like...
Oh, man. You're not wrong. I also agree with the sentiment that, like, the biggest problem with these Spider-Man movies is that it's very commercialized because it has to tie into the bigger universe. Again, when these movies had time to breathe, they're still great, and these movies are still good. I think what these movies did right is that they kind of fixed the MCU's problem of like not having good villains, because Michael Keaton and Jake Gyllenhaal are great bad guys, opposite, Tom Holland. So I'm very happy that Michael Keaton's gonna like stick around at least for now, question mark, and have Jake Gyllenhaal show up, question mark. But I agree. I think, I love the quippiness of Tom Holland. I think, again, when I think of the prototype, for Spider-Man, I think of, short, quippy in high school. Like, I think back to that line of, you remember that really old movie, The Empire Strikes Back? All that shit is just so funny. Like, and I think he's, I like the supporting cast as well. I do like that they took a couple of other comic liberties with that, because I think in the original trilogy, Betty Brant, who's like J.K. Simmons' secretary, is played by Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah.
And in the Homecoming trilogy, Betty Brant is just like a girl in Peter's like high school class. Or like character the character that plays Ned in the comic books ends up becoming one of the people that becomes the Hobgoblin. And in this universe, he's just his friend in high school. And, they take the liberty with, obviously, with the Mary Jane stuff. It is not just Mary Jane. Zendaya plays Michelle Jones, aka MJ, in the films. So yeah, I do like some of the liberties that they're taking to kind of make things feel a little bit more modernized. And again, the suits are great. I loved what they've done with the suits. I agree with Glenn. Glenn and I have had this conversation in person where it's just like, it's a little annoying that you very rarely get to see Tom Holland in just like the proper, like, Spider-Man, like, red and blues. I do feel like they lean a little bit too heavily on the Iron Spider, at least with the current advertising material. And but again, you got to sell them toys. So we're the suits from what I've seen in the trailers and the merchandise so far, they're gonna look pretty dope in No Way Home.
Yeah,
So.
they actually do look pretty cool. Like I kind of wish I would just see. I think that's like one of the things about the whole. There's only 2 movies in the series, but it just feels like there's no proper Spider-Man moments yet because like New York City, like that's Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like there's not a movie that just focuses mostly on that. It's like even in the first one, he goes to Washington D.C. and then the second one he's in Europe and stuff. And so I'm missing that too. Maybe that's part of why it doesn't completely feel like these movies are Spider-Man movies to me because like they don't hit enough of like the classic Spider-Man tropes enough. But outside of that, I mean, the costumes do look really cool for what they are. Like they all look better than the Amazing Spider-Man costume. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and also like I agree with that because I meant to bring this up earlier. New York plays such a big part in those in the original trilogy and also in the Amazing trilogy. When people are throwing shit at Green Goblin, we're just like, hey, why are you stop? He's just trying to save some kids. What the fuck are you doing? And then seeing on the train, it's like, oh, you got to go through me and me and me.
Yeah, New York.
That scene was so good.
Yeah, and then there is also a scene semi like that in the Amazing Spider-Man where like Andrew Garfield gets like shot in the leg by one of the NYPD. So like he can't like swing very well. So there's a guy that he like there's a person whose kid Spider-Man saved earlier in the film. He's like a crane operator. So like he like radios all the other crane operators to like hang their cranes like over, over into the avenues of like New York City so that Spider-Man has like a direct path to like swing to like Oscorp. So like New York plays such a huge part in those films. And I do agree that these films are missing that. But I do think that they're going to redeem that with this movie because I feel like, it feels very New York centric from what we're showing. Obviously, with the addition of Doctor Strange, another New York based superhero, is going to play a somewhat biggish role in this movie. And yeah, I would say out of all the films, these are the ones that are going to be like the most important to watch to kind of understand the context of what's going on because it's literally the third movie of a trilogy.
Yeah, for sure.
So as for who might show up, there's a lot of speculation of who might show up. Does Vulture come back? I don't know. Does Mysterio come back? I don't know. We don't really know who like the main baddie of this movie is, but I will say that these movies are just as important. Maybe not the tertiary stuff like Civil War and the Avengers films, but definitely watch at least these 2 movies to like understand what's going to happen in the third one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to watch at least. I think Marvel does a really good job of like they know that there's so much stuff people need to catch up on just in their own universe. So now that they're crossing universes over, like I'm sure they'll have cool scenes where it kind of like summarizes for a kid who didn't see, the first Spider-Man movie from 20 years ago. Like, oh, who's this character? I don't get it. I'm sure they'll kind of brush people up, but yeah, definitely if you want to have like the full experience, the first 2 movies are for sure you have to see them. And then you have to see Homecoming and Far From Home at least. Like that's probably the bare minimum if you're gonna go down the movie route.
And Civil War.
And
I'd say you should watch Civil War as well. That airport scene is still like one of the best fight scenes in a movie I've ever seen. It's so good. So we have reached the end of our journey here. We've all given our thoughts. Before we get out of here, I'm gonna give some honorable mentions of films that I think you should watch just to get like the full context of what's going on. I will start with saying you should all watch the second Venom film. Don't watch the first one if you want to. The second one, there is a scene in the movie that does directly correlate to what might happen in Spider-Man No Way Home. I know Riz has seen the movie, I've seen the movie, and Glenn, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
So the post-credit scene of Venom 2, spoiler by the way, Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock is transported into the MCU right as the moments as J. Jonah Jameson is revealing Spider-Man's identity to the world. So Tom Hardy might show up in this movie in some capacity. Don't know in what capacity, but I figured y'all should probably know that. And I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat for a second if you guys will allow me.
Go ahead.
Just for 1 second. Everyone should already watch Into the Spider-Verse. I think that's a great movie, but There was
Low
a
key.
report-
Sorry,
The
real
best-
quick. Low key, best Spider-Man movie that's not a Raimi movie is that one.
I
Oh,
agree.
that's true.
I
It's
Yeah,
actually the
that's
best
just
one.
a fact. Yeah, it's
That's
not
a
even
fact.
like yeah.
That is the coldest possible take on this podcast. So
Yeah.
and you like Spider-Man 3. So, but anyway,
I
sorry.
love Spider-Man 3. I love
So-
Spider-Man 3.
Now, there is now screenings of the movie are coming out this week. And from what I've read on reports online is that they're only screening 40 minutes of the movie to critics. So,
What?
yeah, they're only showing 40 minutes of the movie, which leads me to believe. Now let's just keep it real here. The fact that Toby Mcguire and Andrew Garfield might be in this movie is the worst kept secret in fucking Hollywood. Like, if they're not in the movie at this point, I'm going to be pissed because I've just been lied to for, the last year by Alfred Molina and company. What if this movie very clearly is, continuing Marvel's steps into the multiverse with Phase 4? What if they bring in a live action Miles Morales in this movie? What if? Just bear with me for a second. So, I think you should watch Into the Spider-Verse because, like, hey, that movie deals with multiversal crap. This movie is dealing with multiversal crap, and there's very clear that like Spider-Man might be popping up in like other properties involving Spider-Man between Sony and Marvel. So who's not to say that they can bring in a fourth Spider-Man in this movie for all they care? Because it's the multiverse. They can do whatever the fuck they want with it and just say, it's the multiverse. So let me know if I'm crazy.
Dude, what if they bring in the Insomniac Spider-Man? Do anything they want. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, honestly. Well, first of all, I was going to ask this earlier and I forgot. But like, dude, Toby Mcguire and Andrew Garfield have to be in this movie. Like,
yeah.
At this point, this concept is going to be very disappointing, I think, if they're not in this movie. Like, it's kind of like, bro, you got back Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. And like everyone, like it's literally everybody's here. And then if you don't have
Yes.
Toby Mcguire is the number one get. I feel like if this concept, in my opinion, like I'm theorizing from like not being an executive, of course, at a movie theater, but like at a movie studio. But I feel like this whole concept would not have gotten greenlit if they didn't start with, hold on, can we get Toby Mcguire? Because if we can't, then don't even go down this road because that's the only thing people are going to talk about. So
yeah,
first of all, there's that. But to your theory, I didn't even think about that. Like, what if they were really ballsy and it would be really cool if they literally just got an animated Miles Morales, like he's literally a cartoon. You know what I mean?
Here's
like,
the thing.
Like,
because
there's all these live action people, and then you have this one Spider-Man who's like literally like a 3D, 2D model thing,
They don't even have to do that because with some throwaway dialogue in Spider-Man Homecoming, Miles Morales exists in the MCU.
Well, he's like a child, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a child, but again, with the blip and the multiverse, who the fuck knows?
the blip,
they already incorporated the Prowler, with Donald Glover, which is a great scene. One of my favorite lines in a Marvel movie is Donald Glover just saying, "I don't like bread." It's very funny.
Same.
Yeah. But again, this movie is going to get weird. It's going to go places. Who's to say that I think whatever they're trying to hide from the critics is going to be like a mind-melting surprise. And in a world where there's no COVID and everything is hunky-dory, I think this movie has a shot at breaking Endgame's box office record because of just like,
dude, I actually think it definitely is. Fucking every theater is sold out everywhere. Like, it's insane.
I haven't seen it like this in a while, and like,
dude, a month in advance. I haven't seen that ever. Like,
when did they ever advertise? Yeah, when did they ever advertise movie tickets going on sale like they did with this movie?
Yeah,
like,
a month. What?
Yeah.
Yo, side bet right now on the record. Before we go, we have to side bet.
Okay.
Is Toby Mcguire in this movie as Spider-Man? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank God. That's what I'm doing too, bro. I'm literally going to this movie. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be disappointed with the movie if he's not in it because I don't care enough about superhero movies. I try to go into movies just like not expecting anything. But man, if he's in this movie and I could see him as Spider-Man one more time, that will be worth the admission, and that'll be worth the COVID I get in the theater, bro. It'll be hype. It'll be great, man. So I don't know. It's so funny. Like they have these multiverse guys now because the Flash movie is going to be connecting Ben Affleck's Batman to Tim Burton's like Michael Keaton Batman. And so like Michael Keaton is playing Batman in a Flash movie and he's in the Vulture movie. And then Toby Mcguire might be doing this thing like, oh boy, this is going to be
Wait, I did not
man.
know that about Flash. What?
Oh yeah,
Michael Keaton is narrating the teaser that they just put out, and he is reprising the role of Batman in that movie.
I think he's like a major Batman in like one of those universes they're doing. So my man is cashing Marvel checks and DC checks and Bird checks for the rest of his life. Like avian checks for the rest of his life.
Wait. Hold on 1 second. Before we go, can I ask one question? Let me get your ideas on this because it just hit me right now. So let's say that Toby Mcguire is in this movie, right? And Andrew Garfield is in this movie. Does that open up the lane for like, oh, now that we introduced everybody to and connected the universes, these movies can exist alongside each other and Sam Raimi can come and do another Spider-Man and it's in what we're doing now. Does that make sense?
Oh, man. I don't know, man.
That's wishing for too much.
Yeah, because I still think they want to. I think they still want to push Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and Sony's still doing their own like Sony Spider-Verse stuff because they have a Kraven movie coming out in 2023, I think, which is dope. Kraven's Last Stand is one of my favorite comic books of all time, so that'll be fun to see adapted to the big screen. And also, Sam Raimi's directing the next Doctor Strange movie, so I think he's going to be okay.
Oh, that's right.
For a while.
Wait.
So that's the movie you're talking about?
Wait.
That's his in?
Does that not just... If Tobey Maguire's in this movie because of some Doctor Strange, insane power stuff...
Fuckery.
Then that means he can do a Doctor Strange movie with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
And that movie's being advertised as a horror movie, and I forgot how scary these like Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies are. Like that scene in the hospital with Doc Ock is fucking terrifying.
Outside of the Spider-Man movies, he's almost exclusively done only horror movies.
Yeah,
people forget Sam Raimi's literally almost only done horror movies.
Yeah, I forgot that even. So that's gonna be fun. I don't know, man. That'd be kind of cool. Like to see another movie of like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man would be dope. Andrew Garfield can keep doing Broadway. I really don't care. But we've reached the end of our journey. I hope you guys have, are a little bit more in tune as to like how we feel about Spider-Man. And let us know what you guys think about Spider-Man. Are you guys excited? Are you willing to side bet with Glenn that Tobey Maguire is not in this movie? I'm willing to side bet that this movie breaks Endgame's original opening weekend numbers, which I think was like $200 and something million. So.
I think this is going to be big, but man, I don't know. Endgame was like, that's like money you could stack to the moon, dude.
This is true,
dude,
but also
I was able to get seats for Endgame easily the week before.
This is true.
That's actually true. I think we saw it together. Yeah.
Yeah, it took me almost like 3 hours to get tickets for this movie. But nonetheless, though, Riz, if you want to advertise anything on the internet of where you are, so people can watch you tweet about Spider-Man, where can they find you?
Twitter.com/RizzyBear. You can see me tweet about, I don't know, Shin Megami Tensei 5 and how good that game is.
I'm going to pick that up at some point. I want to play it.
It's good.
Now, Glenn, where can the people, lovely people on the internet find you in your little corner of the world?
Man, I don't do anything anymore, bro. I got none to plug, none to advertise. Glentendo is dead. Officially RIP, bro.
Oh, boy.
The Sandman shot me, bro. I'm just... So
we didn't talk nearly about how stupid that fucking was.
Again, liberties that they took in the third movie. We're not going to besmirch the third movie here anymore, okay? We skipped over that. Anyway, if you want to follow me on
Marco
Twitter,
in his stupid striped shirt.
Yeah. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I talk about Nintendo gaming stuff, and occasionally I'll passive aggressively like people's tweets, stuff like that. If you're into that, check me out at Super Glentendo. And yeah. Outside of that, I'm just a friendly neighborhood, Koopa podcast friend. That's it. That's me, bro.
I wonder who's gonna play me in the extended universe. Like that'd be
Enter the Koopaverse, bro. Enter the Koopaverse.
So it's me, it's Howard Stern and Joe Rogan. There we go. That's the No Way Home podcast.
Oh boy.
If you guys want to follow me on the internet, You can follow me across platforms at Koopa NJ. That's Koopa NJ, like New Jersey. I got a big thing that I got to announce, but I can't announce it yet because it's not public news yet. So follow me on social media for that. It's going to be big. Of course, follow the show across platforms at Koop'd Pod. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever your podcasting platform of choice may be. We're also on YouTube, of course. And check us out on the BLEAV podcast website as well, BLEAV.com, BLEAVpodcast.com /Koop'd. Follow BLEAV Podcast as well at BLEAV Podcast, BLEAV Podcasts on social media. So shout outs to them. So with that being said, folks, the next time you get a podcast from us, it'll be the week of Spider-Man. And I don't know what the fuck I'm going to talk about. I might just watch Toby Mcguire dance on repeat for 6 days in prep. But yeah, we will catch you guys next time. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend and stay safe, y'all.
See ya.